You are go for show.
Good afternoon. I'm Tara Singer, and it is my honor and privilege to serve as the President and Chief Executive Officer of Omicron Delta Kappa. Welcome to this afternoon's forum with the three candidates for the position of Faculty Staff Trustee and Chair-elect of the Mission Committee. Our three candidates are Jamie Bolden, an initiate of the Stephen F. Austin State University Circle and a current Circle Coordinator, Sheridan Henson, an initiate of the Cumberland University Circle and a current Circle Coordinator, and Ryan Upshaw, an initiate of the University of Mississippi Circle and a former Circle Coordinator. Profiles of all three of our candidates may be found on the ODK website. Since this is only the second time we are holding an online candidate forum, let me recommend a couple of strategies for best experiencing this activity. First, unless you are one of the candidates, please put your speaker on mute. However, since I think we've set it up the other way, that may not necessarily be required. Second, let me suggest that you click on speaker view in the upper right-hand corner so that you'll have a full screen view of the candidates as they address the questions. The format for this afternoon's forum is as follows. I'm going to ask Jamie the first question, and then I'll ask Sheridan to answer the same question, and then I'll ask Ryan to answer the same question. With the next question, Sheridan will answer first, Ryan second, and Jamie third. And then with the following question, Ryan will answer first, Jamie second, and Sheridan third. We will alternate between the candidates until we reach the end of the 8 questions. At the conclusion of the formal questions, my colleague, Tim Reed, who is our Vice President for Membership and Operations, will read the questions from the audience. Please submit your questions to Tim through the chat feature on Zoom. When we begin with the audience questions, Ryan will go first, Jamie second, and Sheridan third. Let us begin. Jamie, what is your current professional position and academic background?
So I am the director of the Center for Career and Professional Development at Stephen F. Austin State University. We're in Nacogdoches, Texas, the oldest town in Texas, about 2 hours north of Houston. I oversee a centralized career services office here, so engage in career coaching, mock interviews, document critiques, manage career fairs, the whole 9 yards for our university, which has about 12,000 students between graduate and undergraduate. I am a graduate of Stephen F. Austin. I have a degree in journalism from here, and I graduated in 2005. I worked as a journalist for a little while and then decided to go back to school to pursue a master's in higher education, which I received from the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. Following that, I was invited to apply for a position back at SFA, and was a great job, and I couldn't turn it down. And it was one of those, we'll stay for 3 or 4 years and then we'll see where life takes us. Life has kept us right here. I have been working at SFA for 12 years now in a couple of different capacities. One of my most favorite of which was advising our ODK circle off and on over the years.
Thank you, Jamie. Sheridan, what about your professional position and academic background?
Currently, I'm the executive director of academic support at Cumberland University. That's about 30 minutes east of Nashville, Tennessee. So it's somewhat city and somewhat rural. Academic support, it handles our writing center, our career services, Office of the Chaplain, Office of Retention, all of the offices that would normally work towards helping students outside of the classroom, beyond student services and student development, that sort of thing. A great team of people working there in academic support, answering on the academic affairs side. I also manage our freshman seminar, which we call Foundations of Scholarship and Learning. And I say manage because it's not a program, it's a course, but it takes about 20 instructors to teach over 32 sections of that course. So I heard cats faculty members, and I have really the best and the brightest and the quirkiest faculty members you can find to teach these freshmen, to get them prepared. Because there's one thing we've learned: it really doesn't matter what school they're attending, the vast majority of students in some form or fashion are not prepared for college, whether that's academically or socially or emotionally. All of those things need to be addressed, and we need to be able to usher them in towards success. So that's what we try to do with FSL. And then on the other side of the spectrum, I teach at the graduate level in public service management and in the MBA on leadership courses, conflict resolution, organizational behavior, strategic planning. So I work with students in their very first semester, and then I work with students when they're graduate students or even non-traditional graduate students. So I can work with a 17-year-old and I can work with a 65-year-old. It's a wonderful blessing to be able to be with lifelong learners. And that's kind of my side job, where my main role is administrative. I get spoiled and I get to go back to the classroom each semester as well.
And your academic background?
I earned my BA in English at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, then earned a Master of Science degree at Cumberland, and then earned a Doctorate of Education in leadership and professional practice at Trevecca University in Nashville, Tennessee. So stayed within the state, but have been all over the state and met some wonderful people along the way.
Well, we've got 2 volunteers and 1 rebel on this call. So Ryan, why don't you share about your professional position and your academic background?
Sure. Greetings, everyone that may be watching this. My name is Ryan Upshaw, and I currently serve as the Chief Diversity Officer at Jackson Preparatory School in Jackson, Mississippi. We're a small private school in our state's capital, and we serve about 730 or so students from grades 6 through 12. And so my role there encompasses a wide variety of pieces that revolve around enhancing diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts at Jackson Prep. So that has ranged from working to recruit prospective students to the school, to working with student life and engagement to provide support for our students. So whenever issues arise, that we can support those issues and handle them in a timely and efficient manner, to working with alumni and development. So my role kind of spans across the whole school. So I get the opportunity to touch a little bit of everything that Jackson Prep does. And it's been a great year so far being in this position. Prior to being at Jackson Prep, I served at the University of Mississippi for about 13 and a half years, holding positions in our Office of Admissions, our Barksdale Honors College, and our School of Engineering Dean's Office. So I had the opportunity to, again, work with students from the very beginning of their experience at the university to the very end of their experience at the university, and obviously everything in between. During the majority of my time at the University of Mississippi, I served as an advisor to the Alpha Phi Circle there at the university. And I earned my bachelor's in psychology from Ole Miss. I earned my master's in higher education from Ole Miss, and I've completed my coursework in the Doctorate of Education program and am working towards completing a dissertation focused on student organization advisors experiences on our campus, and hope to complete that very soon.
Thank you. Thank you. So Sheridan, you're going to get to go next in our round of questions. So please tell our viewers who are our current circle coordinators and faculty advisors about your ODK experience and involvement.
Well, sure. My experience started in 2009 as a graduate student. And for me and for another young man in the admissions office at the time, we were looking at a university with a lot of semi-dormant or completely dormant honor societies and social organizations across campus. And we decided that it would just take 2 of us to start bringing a little bit back to life on campus. I think most of those societies went dormant because they they were using them strictly for honoraries, something to pad a resume or something to hang around their necks at graduation. And ODK was one of those organizations on campus that wasn't necessarily dormant, but there really wasn't much activity there, and it wasn't being used appropriately. So we approached the then faculty advisor. We spoke to some other faculty members, and we got it started again. We said we want to be a part of this, but we're going to need your help getting it started. So once it was fired up again, I hung out and stayed along for the ride as kind of an unofficial circle coordinator, faculty advisor for the group, and eventually rolled officially into that position of circle coordinator for the ODK circle. And it was important to me that we first address the deficiencies of just not following best practice, which you can see in the circle distinction awards process, and those levels of distinction really help a circle become healthy again. So it's done a world of good for Cumberland Circle. We've seen students not just see this as something that they could pad their resume with, but an actual vibrant student organization that can make an impression on campus, and can actually champion one of our biggest causes on campus for the past couple of years. And I'll mention that later. But it's been a delight to see the students take over the circle from faculty members and take the lead in making sure that the circle persists, and they add their own kind of flair and flavor to it.
And you're also serving at the national level on a number of committees. Why don't you mention that real quickly?
So I have to applaud Tim Reed for simply sending out the emails saying, if you're interested in getting involved, say something. And there was a gentleman in development here at Cumberland that said, well, Sheridan, I would have never given to ODK this year unless you'd emailed me and just asked. So for Tim, he just asked, and I thought, well, that sounds like quite an adventure. So I just contacted Tim and said, where can you use me? Just let me know. Let me jump in and experience it. And he located positions within that National Awards Committee, and then the Mission Committee. And it's been an adventure, really, especially this year, because there's so many things that are happening, things that I wouldn't have assumed would happen ever. For example, admitting sophomores into ODK, I think, is a wonderful idea. And I'm excited that I got to be a part of that process, however limited it might have been. But it was great to be able to sit on those committees and make some type of imprint on the circle at the national level. And that's probably one of our strengths as a national organization, that faculty members can dive in there and be made of service to the organization. And along the way, they could make little imprints.
Correct. Ryan, why don't you share about your ODK experience and involvement at the local and national level?
Sure. I feel like Sheridan and I should know each other because we have a very similar experience with ODK. So I was fortunate enough to be selected for membership in ODK back at the University of Mississippi in 2005. And so very much like Sheridan mentioned, our circle was pretty much an honorary title thing at the time. At least it was from my perspective. It was a group of students who were kind of already involved in everything on campus. And this was just sort of another thing to add to their resume as they applied for Who's Who and Hall of Fame and these other things that we had at the university at that time. And so I graduated from the university and realized that I wanted to go into higher education, never really thinking that ODK would be back in my life at all. And around 2009, Matt Hopper, who was a former president of ODK, approached me and said, Our faculty advisor is retiring from the university, and we know you from the Honors College, and you recruited a lot of the students who end up in ODK. And we would like for you to consider serving as an advisor to the circle. And at that time, I'll be honest and say that I wasn't starving for things to do. I was advising several organizations already on campus, but because it was Matt and he was a student that I respected, and ODK was an organization, like I said, that I was honored to have been a member of, I accepted the opportunity to do that, and had advised that circle for about 10 years or so. And during that time, very similarly, worked with them to increase the awareness of ODK and what it meant and what it was on the Ole Miss campus, and created some help them to create some programming on campus. For instance, we did an annual partnership with our associated student bodies, freshman programs, and our Lambda Sigma, which is a sophomore society, really was created as a leadership mixer and an opportunity for students across different classes to interact and to meet with each other, talk about leadership issues, talk about service ideas that they had, and be able to connect in a way that they probably wouldn't have been able to connect without a program like that. The other piece that we did was we created our Freshman Leadership Awards, which was sort of a really neat opportunity for us to recognize first-year students for their leadership, but also on a side note, was able to help us identify students who might be good candidates for ODK later on in their college career. So I'm really proud of those two pieces of my involvement with the circle at Ole Miss. And along the way, I began to similarly receive emails about opportunities to get involved with ODK, especially as a circle coordinator, circle advisor, and found opportunities. I feel like I've served on several committees over the years that range from our scholarship review committee to the National Awards Committee and the National Advisory Council. So I've served in several different capacities in the past. I'm currently serving on a DEI subcommittee right now. And I was also asked to chair a leadership committee that is on hold right now, but I hope to look forward to getting that back on track in the future. And yeah, I feel like that's my experience with ODK, and it's been a fantastic run so far, and I hope to continue that.
Thank you, Ryan. Jamie, why don't you share about your experience? It might be sort of a similar story as well.
Yeah. So in 2004, when I was a student here at SFA, I was not very involved in kind of the traditional leadership track. I wasn't an orientation leader. I didn't do tours, anything like that, but I was the editor of our campus newspaper and, kind of involved in that way, but very much like siloed in my area that I was a leader in. And I took a job my senior year of high school. It was a 10-hour-a-week student worker job that I took because it was, if we're going to be frank, it was convenient. It was in the same building where the newspaper office was, and I needed a job. And so I had gotten to know the director of student affairs here, and he told me about this job. And it was 10 hours a week, cataloging volunteer opportunities and promoting those to the students. And so I took that job. And so Michael and I got to be close. And he one day was like, "Why aren't you in ODK?" And I said, "Well, I didn't think it was for me. I'm not an OL. I'm not in Greek life." And he said, "Yeah, but you're the editor of the campus newspaper. Like it's an organization meant to recognize leadership across campus in lots of different ways." So I joined ODK, and I count that experience and that conversation with Michael to be one of the most impactful of the course of my life and professionally speaking, because joining ODK was really impactful for me as a student. And the circle had just begun. I think it was about a year old whenever I joined it. And so when I graduated, I was going to go be a journalist, and it was a great experience, but I felt like it was just something that happened in college. And then I ended up moving back into higher ed. And so when I got the opportunity to come back to SFA, part of my role was to be the coordinator for ODK. And so I took on that responsibility in 2009. I was very nervous about it. I remember the student who was the president then, just side-eyeing me like crazy because she'd worked with Michael for so long, and she was like, "I don't know you. I don't trust you." And, I attended her wedding this last summer. She and I have become great friends, and just the relationships that I built with students over the course of working with ODK have really been just the deepest of my career. I am, have attended weddings and baby showers for student leaders, and it's been a privilege to see. I had 4 ODK presidents who've now gone on to be doctors and have gone to medical school, and so it just was an amazing time professionally for me. We coordinated campus-wide leadership conferences. We had a similar program, Ryan, to what you're talking about. We did a top 23, freshman leadership program. That was a great way to identify future students in ODK. Our circle was very active. I benefited from having strong leadership that had built that circle. When we came in, it was strong to begin with. But I do feel like, over the 5 years that I worked in leadership and service programs, that we really did some outstanding stuff within that. I'm extremely proud of the work that I did there. A couple of years into that position, ODK put out a call for what was then the National Advisory Council. And I remember applying for that while I was at a leadership conference for ODK. And so I'm sitting in a dorm room in Charlotte. And I was so nervous about submitting that. I had imposter syndrome like crazy. I said, there is no way that anyone is going to pick me for this. And then they did. And so I served for 4 years on the National Advisory Council. Since then, I've presented at a couple of different leadership conferences. I've run convention programs for 2 conferences, been a podcast guest, which was a very nerdy ambition of mine that Tim invited me to do, and I was super excited about. There has not been a single thing within ODK that I haven't enjoyed. Chairing the National Awards Committee, being on Mission Committee, there's not been a single part of my involvement with the national office that I haven't truly enjoyed and haven't truly benefited from professionally over the years. It really has just been a highlight of my 12 years in higher education. I love it. I have an ODK shelf back there. Y'all can't see it off camera, but everyone comes in and goes, "What's O triangle K?" I'm like, "Oh, y'all, let me tell you what it is."
Well, we are indebted to you all for all the things that you've done for the society in your various volunteer capacities. You all are 3 of our very best, and I'm really excited that you all are the candidates for this position. So, Ryan, why are you interested in this opportunity?
So I'll be honest and say, when I made the really difficult decision to leave the University of Mississippi, I knew I obviously would not be serving as a circle coordinator, circle advisor anymore. And I kind of got a little bit nervous and thinking about what I would be doing with ODK going forward. And so I wanted to find an opportunity to continue to serve, serve the organization. And so when I heard about the opportunity that there was a vacancy or an opening on the board, I thought about it for a couple of days when I heard about the opportunity, and then realized that, very similar to Sheridan and Jamie, the passion that I have for the organization and the dedication that I've had to it for the past several years is still definitely there. And when this opportunity became open, I knew that it would be a great opportunity for me to continue serving ODK. And I checked out the website and looked to see who some of the people were that were currently serving on the Board of Trustees, and realized that I would be extremely humbled and honored to serve in a capacity with those outstanding leaders who are part of ODK and a part of the ODK family. So that's really the reason why I'm here today, is because I just have a passion for this organization and want to continue to see it advance and continue to see it grow. 10, 20, 30 years from now, I want to see ODK as still a sustainable, viable organization on college campuses across the country.
You and me both. So, Jamie, how about your interest in this opportunity?
ODK has provided me with so many opportunities for growth and networking and innovative ideas and support and mentorship over the years, that to think that I'm at a stage in my career now where I can have a part to play in that at a national level is really exciting. And to steal the word from Ryan, it's very humbling. It's humbling to think that, I I have ideas and I have experience that I could potentially contribute at the national level to help to see the organization continue to grow and thrive and to be something that I'm proud to be a part of. And then I'm proud to speak very excitedly and very candidly about to people about how I feel like ODK is very different from a lot of other honor societies that are just something to put on, on the resume. I think that ODK nationally is unique in that it really pours back into its membership. It is concerned about the quality of its membership and how the national organization can contribute to those members' experience, to those members' leadership development. They're not just interested in collecting membership fees. They're engaged in how can we utilize those funds in the best fashion in order to give back to our members. And so, I've spent a lot of time and a lot of energy with ODK over the years with my students and then with the national organization. And so to think that, I have the potential to be selected to help, provide, in a leadership capacity, something to give back to that is extremely exciting. It would be very humbling to be selected for it, but I would be extremely excited and extremely honored to help to continue to give back in some capacity.
Thank you. And Sheridan, why are you interested in being the faculty staff trustee?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is Covey. Covey said that it's easy to say no if you have a greater yes. And for me, ODK is my greater yes. And in everything I do at Cumberland, I try to remind myself, how can ODK benefit from what we're doing? It's almost runs along my personal mission statement when I'm in the office. So if ODK is my priority as a professional at Cumberland, then why wouldn't I try to apply for the board and see if I can have a voice heard from a smaller school, a humble school. But ODK is made of small, humble schools. So, what better applicant than a Jamie or a Ryan or a Sheridan to be at the national level making an impact.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next set of questions are about ODK at the national level, maybe the macro level, followed by a couple of questions about ODK at the micro or the circle level. So, Jamie, we're going to start with you. What do you think are the top 3 issues facing Omicron Delta Kappa as an honor society at the national level?
Get unmuted. So a few challenges. One, I think the pandemic has obviously, opened up some new challenges that 18 months ago we would have said no. Like had we been able to foresee it, no one could have anticipated that. So I think, considering how to engage members virtually would be one. I think that that's something that we're not going to see go away. I think here at our university, it's opened up some conversations about, well, how are we engaging with our distance students? How are we engaging with students who are non-traditional students who can't be here during those kind of traditional activities hours? How are we providing them with an equitable experience? And so I think that conversation is going to be one that continues of how are we engaging, with members who can't be present physically on campuses, but are still full students who want to be involved with the organization. So I think the virtual engagement would be one. I think continuing to find, sources for finances. I think, looking at, members and finances and, getting membership fees in is great, but I think we also have to align that with that there is a real financial need amongst many of our students. The university where I work, about half of our students are first generation, and many of those come from families who are at or below the poverty line. And so when we think about, asking them for membership dues, a lot of those students, it is a very significant challenge for them to come up with $88 to contribute to that. And so I think, being realistic about that and, continuing to look at, development opportunities to help to support that, I think will be important. I think too, at the national level, we've consistently seen issues with engagement from some circles, trying to get circles to fill out a circle report each year. We Why aren't circles filling out those reports? Why aren't people nominating circle leaders of the year? Things like that. I think it's a complicated question. I think we all have a million things on our plates, and I understand that, but figuring out, the national office and the organization as a whole only benefits from that information. And so that lack of information, I think, causes us to struggle sometimes when we're looking at, how to improve ODK. And so I think, figuring out ways to help to engage the membership and just even those small ways that really can contribute, I think would be the third in there.
All righty. Sharon, what do you think are the top issues facing the organization at the national level? I think you're
excited and I was muted.
Yeah.
At the national level, Jamie brings up some interesting topics. For me, I'm trying to think about our constant and our persistent move towards promoting diversity. I don't think that's something that is a challenge that we're going to ever want to surpass or to choose to be a challenge that is no longer a challenge. It's something that we have to maintain. So what can we do at the national level to maintain and celebrate diversity? We have a long and illustrious history of recognizing student government leaders on campus. We identify students that are the traditional leaders, but what about the leaders within some of the social justice type issues that are either already established on our campuses or they're just budding, they're just growing. So I think at the national level, the big challenge is to nurture and to develop focusing on that type of thing with students, making sure that we seek out opportunities to improve at the local level and try to help local circles identify where the true leaders might be on the campuses. What can we do through our exercise and our processes to make sure that we maintain our goal towards increasing diversity? How do we increase diversity at the national level with our leaders? How do we promote faculty and staff that are minorities, that are LGBTQ? How are we going to get them to step forward and to take positions of leadership at the national level? I would be excited to think that ODK would be known as the place where those views are welcomed and are not just tolerated but celebrated. So I think that's going to be a persistent challenge for us at the national level, which I hope it always will be. I think a second challenge is to not just accept sophomores as members within the society, but to develop the kind of programming we need to recruit them, to groom them towards becoming leaders within the circle. What can we do at the national level to entice them to go beyond their predecessors? I think that can be done at the national level. Third, at the national level, gosh, I might be at a loss there. I think if we're looking for ways to prevent ODK from being strictly an honorary and being lost amongst all the other honoraries that are nationwide, when you do a quick Google search, there is just a onslaught of honor societies out there. And then if you just Google, what's the value of joining an honor society? Well, the discussion very often is that there is no value in joining. So what is it about ODK that creates an enduring value? And we all know the answer to that. But can we maintain a difference between us and them when it comes to showing students that they're joining a student organization and that it's a student organization for life, and that it is not just something to put on your resume, and it's not just a stepping stone, but it's actually a way to create positive change in your communities and even at the national level. And it's something that people don't assume you can do through an honor society, but you can, and it could be done through ODK. And I would argue that maybe ODK is one of just a small handful of societies that have that ability.
Ryan, what do you think are some of the top 3 issues facing ODK as an honor society?
Sure. One of the things that came to mind as I think about that question is sustainability. Is something that I mentioned earlier. One of the things that I think would be potentially helpful is doing 2 things at the national level. One is seeing what circles are maybe dormant or inactive, and really getting people engaged and figuring out how we can reactivate, reinvigorate those circles so that we can keep our membership up. And as we think about things like membership fees, we can think about how that looks if we have more circles and more people coming in to the organization. Not saying that we necessarily lose any sort of standards or anything like that, but really just focusing on how we expand our circles, but also reinvigorating circles that may not be active right now. I know that there have been times where I think we've reached out to people and maybe that circle wasn't ready at that point, and then maybe a couple years later, maybe they are ready. So making sure that we stay on top of that sort of thing, I think is going to be really important in our sustainability efforts. The other piece that's sort of interwoven in that is our DEI efforts, and particularly the E part of that being the equity piece. I fully agree with what Jamie said about dealing with students who are looking at these types of organizations and are concerned about the $88. I mean, when I was a circle advisor, we used to help students as best we could. If we, really saw a young person who really wanted to be a part of the organization, we did everything from, sometimes I paid out of pocket, to help, get the person in there, or we did a payment plan or something, when we could tell the person really wanted to be, a part of the organization. We did our best to save what little money we had for funds to support students like that. But I think part of that, where that equity piece comes in, is that the finances can be a barrier to students. And there are some students who just wouldn't apply because they've looked at the website and they've seen that it's an $88 fee, or they've talked to someone who's a member and they say, yeah, I paid $88 to become a member. So sometimes you might run into situations where a really great student like Sheridan mentioned, who's really active in social justice or, in other groups, may not apply because of that. So I think that's something that we can continue to look at, and something that we can continue to explore. The other part of the DEI in terms of what we can be doing at a national level is finding opportunities to partner with historically Black colleges and universities to expand our circles there. Before today, I actually looked up Howard University and Spelman College, which are regarded as probably 2 of the most well-known and well-respected HBCUs in the country, and they do not shelter a chapter of ODK as far as I could tell from their information. And when I saw that, I was kind of astounded. I was like, why do we not have ODK on Howard and Spelman College's campuses? So the DEI piece is obviously from an equity, but also from a diversity and inclusion piece as well, making sure that we can show these college campuses that we are a viable organization that they should have on their campus. And my final thought was, again, I think Sheridan and Jamie both did a great job of talking about member engagement. I fully agree with that. Where I think about member engagement, it obviously starts at the circle level. And I think that sometimes the experience that a student has at the circle level is indicative of where they will ultimately end up in terms of their member engagement later on, or their interest in volunteering for the organization later on. So if, as we've talked about before, if a circle is not very active, or people don't view it as something that's, important, or they don't really see the value of it, then that may be an issue as we go forward, as we outreach to people, not only to volunteer and to be engaged, but also giving opportunities. So I think that's really important, is to make sure that from a national level, we are working very as closely as we possibly can with our circles. And I think ODK did this some years ago. It might have been before my engagement as a member, but I've been a part of other organizations where there are sort of circle liaisons, and these are volunteers who are checking in with the circles on a regular basis and saying, how are we doing? Or did you get that chapter report, filled in and submitted? That's the kind of thing. I think that personal touch, may add something to what we're doing. And then that personal touch also may keep some of those students who are, thinking about this organization, as they graduate, and how they may want to continue involvement. So those are some of the things that I think about when I think about our engagement at the national level.
Okay, well, you all brought up some really great stuff. And so just as a couple of points of order, the Society does have a gift of membership program, and each circle is allowed to request a gift of membership once a year on behalf of one student. We obviously don't have funds to provide a gift of membership for all those circles, but if you're an advisor, please keep that in mind. Ryan, I'm smiling because recently the board approved the position of an alumni advisor to be a support to each circle. And then our most recent circle to be installed on April 21st, our 424th in the Society's history, is Talladega College, which is an historically Black college and university. And it's in Talladega, Alabama, home of the racetrack. So we also have a grant from the Boulay Foundation. So we have been in conversation with a number of HBCUs, including the ones you mentioned. So just want to make certain everybody knows those things are out there these days. So, okay. So the next question requires you to remember your answer to the last question you just answered. So pick one of the challenges you described and provide a little bit of an idea about how maybe the Society should respond to that challenge. So Sheridan, you get to go first.
Sure. When I think about how at the national level, and I may have touched this on my first question, how at the national level can we get faculty members, can we get staff members, can we get students willing to accept membership? But I think perhaps this big challenge we have for sophomores, and perhaps we picked out and it passed so easily because we see the benefits of it. But what are some of the challenges that we might face? You have that sophomore chill, or that cooling period in retention, where you're trying to make sure you get them to that junior year. How do we fire up, or how do we focus on that? I think at the national level, we would want specific type of programming that could lure sophomores into the process. Could we provide specific types of events at the national conference that's focused on these brand new leaders coming into the circles? Can we somehow set up training processes for student mentors that are seniors or juniors that could actually mentor or usher in sophomores? Are there any kind of scholarship opportunities that we can use at the national level that could entice sophomore members within our circle? So I think that might be really a target-rich environment when it comes to opportunities at the national level, because it's a brand new concept for us of bringing in these younger students. We haven't fallen prey to this notion that we should have freshmen through graduate students and just take anybody in at lowered standards. We still maintain those high standards, but we're willing to bring in sophomores in order to get that extra year to really see what kind of leader can come through that process. So at the national level, I think we should consider incentives. We should consider perhaps a possible scholarship piece there. We need to consider the kind of things that we could insert into the national conference for those sophomores as well. But the sky is really the limit. I think when you get the board together, they can look at how we might be able to bring them into the fold and to actually see if you can get them to their full potential.
So Ryan, pick one of your challenges and share some thoughts about how the society should respond to it.
Sure. An idea that I think about is regarding member engagement potentially. I know that we have a student advisory board that's very active, but something that I think we miss a group of people is something that I would like to term as like the young alumni group. I think that people feel like because most students have come in as juniors and seniors and they graduate. So I don't think that they feel yet like true alumni, especially of their colleges and universities. And so maybe there could be an opportunity to create a young alumni council or committee or advisory board, something along those lines, to get a group of younger alums of ODK engaged and involved. That way we don't lose those people, because again, most like what most people think when they become an alumni, they don't think about being an actual alum until, 5-10 years down the road. And then, they may have other priorities and ODK is not part of those priorities. You're always going to have those people who were chapter presidents, circle presidents, and things like that, who are really engaged and may be involved in that. And maybe that's where we start. And then we grow that group into not just circle presidents, but other people who are active and engaged in that group. Because again, it makes me think about, like I said, my own experience. Again, when I graduated from Ole Miss in 2006, it never would have really crossed my mind that I could be involved in ODK after I graduated. That just never occurred to me. But by the time I was about, maybe, like I said before, about 5 years or so out of my undergraduate experience, I then began to realize what opportunities there were. So that's just an idea that comes to my head. In regarding, I'm glad to hear about the alumni advisor position, and would love to see that person have a group maybe of volunteers. Maybe that's where some of the young alumni could come in, of people who are reaching out and touching base with those chapters, because I think that would be a pretty big job for one person to be reaching out to all of those circles. And so maybe they could be the leader, but then have some people who are kind of volunteers supporting the circles across the country.
And Jamie, why don't you provide us with some thoughts about how we should respond to the challenges from the group that you presented?
Yeah, so my ideas are going to go along the member engagement lines as well. One of the real highlights of my involvement with ODK at the national level is reading National Leader of the Year and Clay Grant applications. And there are so many of our circles that have innovative ideas, innovative practices. I'm always impressed every year with, I've read them for years and years now, and there's always something new that comes to the table that I'm just like, would never have thought of that, but what a cool idea. And so I think, utilizing our strong members, our strong leaders, our strong circles to help with outreach and engagement efforts, I think could be cool. I understand that is a challenge because of due to the nature of we tend to get them in junior and senior year, and they're not around for very long, but they are then alumni. And so to kind of tie into what Ryan was saying, figuring out ways to connect struggling circles with with our ones that are more vibrant and are stronger. I think that could maybe have some real possibilities. I think about my experience in higher education of, peer-to-peer programs that we've done at SFA. So in my office here, we have a student career advocate program where when students come in to get their resume looked at, they're working with another undergraduate student. The reason why is because when they hear me say it, it tends to come across like I'm their parent. And because I'm old enough to be their parent, and it's just, I have a lot that I can offer them. But the reality is they'll hear it and they'll go, uh-huh. But when one of my undergraduate student career advocates tells them, it's like this brand new thing that they've never, and so I think about that in terms of when we do outreach or when circle coordinators talk, or, that I wonder if when we're talking to our students who are in circles that maybe are struggling, that when they hear it from someone like me, that they're just like, yeah. But if they would hear it from my ODK president about how they were able to increase membership, it may come across as more of a, wow, what an idea. I would have never thought of that before. And so, thinking of ways that we can harness those circles and those students who are doing really innovative and amazing things to help those who maybe are struggling, or the newer circles that are struggling, to get started, finding a way to connect them, I think could be really impactful and create a cool opportunity for the current students, for those strong leaders, to think about ways to engage with the national office, provide them with something they can put on their resume about, that they served as, a peer-to-peer mentor within ODK, and that they did Zoom calls with circles who were struggling, that could be a really neat experience for them to articulate on their resume to help them in their future career. So I think, thinking of ways to, to capture the efforts of some of those strong students and strong leaders, but then thinking about how that can help to benefit the national organization. And if they feel more involved, they're more likely to donate later. So that doesn't hurt either.
Give early, give often. So, the people who vote in this election are the sitting circle coordinators and the sitting faculty advisors. So the next question is, what can the national organization do to best address the concerns or better support circle officers? So Ryan, why don't you answer that question first?
Sure. This question is really important to me because, like I said earlier in our conversation, I was just sort of asked to become, I guess what was then maybe known as an advisor, but a circle coordinator. And I didn't really know what I was getting into at the time. So I think that there can be even more beefed up opportunities for advisors, because I think what we've talked about before, I mean, the pandemic has really shown that burnout is a real thing. And so not only for new people, because they may have gotten into something that they weren't really, prepared for, but also for some of those longtime advisors and coordinators who, are just sort of phoning it in at that point, if that makes sense. And so I think that dealing with our faculty and staff advisors and circle coordinators is going to be a really, really important part of those sustainability efforts that I mentioned before, because they are really a big part of what makes these circles operate. Because again, as I think we've all said, the students, come in and they go, but the advisors and the circle coordinators are the ones that are around. I mean, I had no idea that I would be a circle coordinator for 10 years. That in no way was, again, part of my plan. So I think just as much support as we can provide to them, and making sure that as new advisors come in, that we are supporting them as much as we can, but also as we notice someone maybe has been on board for 5, 10, 15 or more years, making sure that those individuals feel the same support, and that we don't just assume that they've got it, that they understand what's going on. And that's something that I've seen in research regarding student group advisors, is that that support, that recognition, is really important, because I would say most people, I know that this is not the case for everyone, but it was the case for me. I was a volunteer advisor. So it wasn't part of a job that I held on a college campus. I know there are a lot of people who advise groups like this as part of their full-time position, but it was something that I did as a volunteer because a student that I respected reached out to me and asked me to do it. So there were weekend initiations and weekend late evening meetings that we were going to, and that was all done as a volunteer. So I fully respect and thank our faculty and staff advisors and circle coordinators for what they do, because I've been there and I understand the issues that they go through. And I think just support from the national office, I think, works to keep that sustainable and to keep that going. And then again, making sure that we have those folks out there reaching out to those circles.
Jamie, what are your thoughts about how the national organization can best address the concerns of circle advisors?
I think Ryan hits on a lot of great points. I think acknowledging that we are all, and especially in the realm of higher education right now, we are all being asked to do more with less. And I think that there has always been kind of not a divide, but a distinction between, those of us who were circle coordinators for whom it was part of our full-time job and that we had some financial support from student affairs or whatever division we worked in. And then a lot of great coordinators out there who are doing it for the love of the students, right? Who are investing that time and effort without receiving any kind of monetary, any sort of monetary support for it, but are super vital to helping to ensure the success of the circle. I think continuing to offer as much support and pouring into the advisor, into the coordinators and faculty officers as possible, whether that be through, opportunities for professional developments or trainings or things like that. A lot of us have really seen restrictions in our ability to travel for conferences and things like that, and just don't have budgets to support that. And so, perhaps offering additional professional development that, can benefit them as a circle officer, but that, is also helps in other ways. I think about, at past conferences where we heard from, Spellman Johnson as one of our sessions, and we were able to talk to them about, how to set ourselves up for success in our next job search, and I really appreciated the opportunity to hear that. While, my bosses probably weren't that happy about me coming back with all this stuff about how I can apply for a new job. I just was really impressed with that as a session. It was very relevant. And, I just felt like it poured into us from a professional development standpoint. And so I think letting our faculty and staff, coordinators know, we see you, we understand the struggle. We understand the struggle of being asked to do more with less. We hear those concerns, and that we want that input to see how we can streamline things and make this a simple process for you, in order to support your circle.
And Sheridan, finally, what do you think are some strategies for the national organization to address the concerns or better support our circle officers?
Well, usually when I think of the normal process for circle coordinators to voice concerns, if they have problems, if they have issues or recommendations, they usually contact one or two different people at the national headquarters. And one of those or two of those or both of those people are not the faculty staff representative on the board. I would think that if you're going to put a faculty staff representative on the board, that they don't serve just to give a single voice perspective when the board discusses change or improvements. But why not at the national level showcase that faculty staff representative as a direct pipeline for all circle coordinators? Could you get a faculty staff board member to introduce themselves to every circle coordinator in the nation, and let them know that you have a representative on the board, and your suggestions and problems could come not just to the ODK headquarters staff, but could also come to that board member. And it reminds them that their voice has value and their voice can be heard. And even if they don't have the ability to be as active as the four of us are at the national level, that they can send just a quick email or a text to their faculty staff representative, and they'll get their voice heard at the national level. And I think that might solve a lot of problems, if there are problems, or it may create a lot of opportunities.
Interesting suggestion. So that would be 100 circles for each of you all. So keep that in mind. So the next question is a little bit about member engagement, which you all have all talked about in various answers to different questions. So if you had the opportunity to develop a member engagement program for Omicron Delta Kappa members, young or maybe not so young, what would it be and how would you like ODK to deliver it? And when I say deliver it, it doesn't mean with a bow necessarily on it, but should that be a virtual or an in-person kind of program, or perhaps a little bit of both? So Jamie, what are your thoughts about that?
I think expanding on what I mentioned before about trying to find opportunities for peer-to-peer connection or young alumni to help to connect with circles, I think that can be a great opportunity for those current students to share their ideas and best practices, but also for our young alums to remain connected to the organization and help to provide, again, some support and some ideas that maybe those struggling circles hadn't connected with, perhaps including them in the ODK Speakers Bureau, or just kind of, again, I know maintaining those sorts of lists is challenging, but finding ways for us to be able to connect those current students and young alums to the newer struggling circles, I think could have some real possibility and can be mutually beneficial on both sides of that relationship.
And Sheridan, do you have an idea for a member engagement program?
Yes, I think perhaps at the national level, providing maybe some in-house leadership training. And when I say in-house, perhaps I should say virtual in-house leadership training for students. We have trained leaders that are serving at the national level for various universities across the United States that you don't necessarily need an expensive platform with memberships, but you can broaden the type of videos that we're already offering through the podcasts, but maybe we could take some time to showcase seminars or topics of discussion that our faculty and our staff and our board members might be interested in sharing with ODK students. That way, when we go to recruit or we go to tap ODK members, we give them the opportunity to develop as leaders, but we also offer an archive or a database of leadership training that we can get together as a circle and watch and debate and discuss. Could actually be kind of a focal point for an officers meeting, other than just doing the basic housekeeping. We can add some leadership training in there as well and have a little food for thought after the meeting is over. So something that could start at the national level and could end up at the circle level.
Okay. And Ryan, what are your thoughts about a member engagement program for ODK?
So I kind of had a similar idea of a video series that engaged a wide variety of constituencies. So maybe we have a couple of our student advisory board members, we pull some young alums along the way. We have some faculty, staff, advisors, and circle coordinators, and just really give them a bird's eye view into what it's like to be a volunteer with the national organization. Because not only do sometimes people not know what opportunities are out there, maybe because they're not checking their emails, or maybe we lose some of those emails along the way when they transition from rlupshaw@olemiss.edu to your current email address when you lose things like that. but it also gives them an understanding of what it means to serve ODK at a national level. And I think that would really give an opportunity for people to see what's going on beyond their undergraduate years. And I think that would help us with some of the volunteer engagement, some of the member engagement opportunities that might be out there, so that we continue to have, fresh ideas and fresh perspectives coming from all of our circles, because that's a big thing for me, is to make sure that I think a couple other people said before, is that all voices are heard, not just those that are able to give a lot of money, or those that are in high leadership roles, at their universities or in their own professional lives, but some of those young alumni, as I think Jamie and Sheridan both have mentioned before, is getting their perspectives, getting their ideas, and something that we can share out. And the great thing about the advent of all this new technology that we're using is people don't have to travel or anything to do this. So you can hop on a Zoom call, just like what we're doing right now. We can have them, it can be moderated like we're doing right now, have a few questions from people, keep it short and sweet, because we know that most people don't watch videos that are more than 2.5 minutes long. So really making sure that we really lay it out there and show people what the opportunities are, not only at the undergraduate level to stay engaged, but also at the alumni level to be engaged.
Thank you. So in a minute, we're going to open the floor for questions from the participants. And so before we go there, Sheridan, is there anything else you'd like to share with the people who are watching today's forum?
This might be counterproductive, but I'll go ahead and share it. Being on the National Awards Committee has been a wonderful experience, and Jamie is the chair of that committee, and has really made that a positive experience for me. So I can't cheer her on or provide any higher praise. And when I applied for this role, I told Jamie if I'd known she had applied too, I wouldn't have even tried, because she's an excellent candidate. And now that I've met Ryan, I feel the same way. So I think whoever you're going to vote for as a faculty or staff member, you're going to make an excellent choice. I have no doubt there.
Well, I think you are all wonderful candidates, and we're very fortunate to have the interest of each one of you. Ryan, is there something else you would like to share before we open the floor?
Yeah, I share those same sentiments. I feel like I've worked with Jamie before. We've been on a couple of committees, and I think the National Advisory Council together. So again, I agree with that. And I think that Sheridan, you would be a fantastic candidate as well. So I just think that whoever is, elected to this position, I hope will have a real strong sense of advocacy for our faculty, staff, advisors, and circle coordinators. And I think each of us really has that passion for serving ODK in a myriad of different ways. And for me, it would just be an honor. And like I said before, I'd be extremely humbled to serve in this capacity. So I would appreciate the support. Thank you.
And Sheridan, I think, or Jamie, let's see, it's Jamie. It's Jamie. I have to get at the screen. So Jamie, what is it that you'd like to share before we open the floor?
I echo the sentiments of the other two. I think that, I'm in good company. It's good to know that regardless of who is selected, that we're all good candidates who care about the circle, who care about the organization, who care about the students, and who are invested in it for the right reasons. And so I think that any one of us would be outstanding. I would be, I'd be honored to serve in it. I would also be really excited for Sheridan or Ryan should they be selected, because I just feel like it's been great to sit here for the last hour and just hear good ideas and genuine caring and concern for the organization and for, for the students. And so I think that any of the choices here today would be great. It's been a privilege to be involved with ODK for so long. My involvement will continue regardless of the outcome of it. I feel like I'm always going to be connected to this organization, and would love the opportunity to continue serving regardless of the capacity, however I can best serve the organization, I'd be happy to continue in those efforts.
Okay, well, thank you for the answering all the preset questions. We have just one question from the floor, and it's an interesting one. And Ryan, you get to go first. And so the question is, what is something that we could stop doing as a national organization if we wanted to tackle some of the things that you've suggested? Is there some program or initiative that maybe it's time for the society to discontinue?
That's actually a really, really good question. I would say something that not necessarily, I would refer to it as a modification possibly of our application. Something that I noticed on, when I was a circle coordinator and would see the national application, sometimes I felt like it just didn't embody everything that we could be searching for in ODK members. And so I know some recent additions were made to it, but I think that we can continue to evaluate our national student application to ensure that we're reaching out to all of those individuals that I think we've talked about, making sure that we're fully inclusive of international students, the students who are leading LGBTQ plus organizations, that they're not afraid to list those things on their application for possible fear that someone may not select them because they've identified themselves in some way that someone may not fully agree with. And so I think that maybe as we continue to consider our application process, maybe we can make some of those small tweaks along the way. So more of a modification of something that we're doing as opposed to something that we completely stop doing.
Okay, all right. Jamie, do you have a thought along those lines?
I would also suggest, a modification. So we've been having some interesting conversations on the National Awards Committee about, how do we get more Circle Leaders of the Year? How do we get those students to apply, for National Leader of the Year? And so I think, and some interesting suggestions have come up from everything from, should we still be, requesting letters of recommendation? Is that a barrier to students? Is it just lots of interesting conversations with that? And so I think that we have to remain open in our application processes and just the processes that we have in place for students to be aware of that. Are we stopping them before they even get started? When they see the membership fee, is that enough to make them stop and not apply any further? Do we need to be more open about, there is a potential for scholarships and, or for, this to be covered. So you should reach out to your circle advisor. I think just continue. I think on the awards committee, we were a little surprised when that got brought up of should we consider, letters of recommendation, and we had really good conversation about it. And it's not, I don't think we're going to discontinue that, but it was really good conversation of going, is this a barrier that we are not aware of? Because we don't want those to be in place and that we're stopping great students from joining the organization or from being recognized in the organization before they've ever even applied for it. And so I think just continuing to be aware of those and being open to those conversations, that the answer may not be a straight yes or no, but we need to be aware of the feedback in that process so that we're not missing out on any of these great students.
Okay. And Sheridan, you get to answer the last question last. Is there something you think that we should stop or modify in order to have the capacity to do some of those other programs that you all suggested?
Yeah, I think it's a tall order, but I just think increased visibility, especially with university leadership across the United States. And I say that's a tall order because that's a lot of schools to cover. But can we strengthen the connection between ODK and university leaderships to where we're not so easily forgotten for the important role that we play? How do we do that? How do we strengthen those relationships? I guess it just takes time, and it takes people to step up as servants and take those roles of strengthening those relationships. But I hate for ODK just to be another honor society that's handled by just another faculty member. And for some university leadership, they don't even know that their faculty member who was in charge of ODK has left, and there's no one at the helm. So how do we make ODK not just an afterthought, but one of the priorities within a strategic plan for university leaders? A tall order, but I think that's something that we could improve.
You all might be pleased to know that we started a presidential communications campaign this year, and that we have right now 2 and possibly a 3rd president coming on our board. So whoever ends up joining the board will be in good company, and we hope to get them involved in all the various committees as well. So you all will each have a chance to work with these individuals. I don't think we have any other questions from the floor. So I want to thank you all for your participation today. The election for the Society's faculty, staff, trustee, and chair-elect of the Mission Committee will take place next week, the week of May 17th through the 21st. All sitting circle coordinators and faculty advisors will be emailed a link to vote along with a passcode, and we will close the election at 11:59 on Friday evening, the 21st. And I will let the candidates know, and we will make a formal announcement the following week. Thank you again for participating, and we look forward to working with each one of these fine candidates in their respective roles going forward. Have a good night.